Hi, I'm Celine. And sometimes the worst betrayals don't come with a knife in your back, just a party you weren't invited to. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I drove past my parents' house on Heather Glen Drive. I wasn't planning to stop. I hadn't been inside in nearly 10 months, not since Thanksgiving when my name was left off the place cards and no one even blinked. I was just heading back from a client site in Rainier Valley, but something in me slowed down as I turned the corner. Maybe it was habit or hope. There were cars, dozens parked along the curb and up the lawn like some impromptu parade. Golden white balloons danced in the breeze, and in front of the porch, a vinyl banner fluttered with bright glittering words, celebrating Jade, 10 years of vision, strength, and sacrifice. I didn't park. I just sat there behind the wheel, one hand still on the ignition, the other clenched around the steering wheel. Jade, my sister, the family's golden symbol of resilience. Not our parents, not the Caro family, just her. My chest tightened, not from surprise, but the lack of it. Because deep down, I already knew they'd erased me. This was just the first time they printed it on a banner. I pulled over 2 houses down and stayed in the car windows up. From a distance, I watched the guests smile and toast. Some I recognized, Mom's book club, a few old church friends, even my high school English teacher, everyone I thought would have noticed I wasn't there. But no one looked around. No one asked where I was. And that silence spoke louder than any rejection letter ever could. Growing up, I used to think things would even out. That if I worked hard enough, if I showed up, if I carried the invisible weight without complaining, someone would finally see me. But lately, it felt less like being overlooked and more like being erased on purpose. I drove off before anyone noticed. My phone buzzed as I turned onto the freeway, probably a delivery app or an old calendar reminder I didn't check. I just needed to breathe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the banner, the speech I hadn't heard, the way Mom probably dabbed at her eyes with a cloth napkin, while Jade raised her glass like she'd built the whole family from scratch. Around 2 a.m., I got up and pulled out a plastic storage bin from the back of my hallway closet, the one filled with old school awards, yellowing postcards, and pieces of a life I used to think had meaning. Near the bottom, beneath a bundle of receipts from my first apartment and a cracked snow globe from junior high, I found it. A silver hair clip, engraved with a single letter C. My mother gave it to me on my 16th birthday. I still remember what she said. "As long as you wear it, I'll always see you as strong." Back then, I believed her. I believed a lot of things. I tucked the clip back into its velvet pouch, slid it beneath a folded sweater, and went back to bed. But sleep never came, just silence. 2 days later, as I reheated leftover lentil soup, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Miss Caro. The voice was male, polite. "This is Lionel Vexler. I was your parents' estate attorney. Well, I was until recently." My grip on the phone tightened. "I'm calling because we've had some trouble finalizing the trust transition paperwork. You were listed as a co-signer on the older version, but we never received your confirmation on the updated documents." I frowned. "What documents?" There was a pause. "They were sent certified mail about 3 months ago, to your address in North Tacoma." I felt a slow chill spread across my chest. I never got anything. He hesitated again. "Would you have time to come in? I believe we need to talk in person." The next morning, I stood in line at the post office, asking the clerk to check the forwarding history on my mailbox. She squinted at the screen, then looked up with a tight, awkward smile. "It says here that the recipient name on file was temporarily changed 2 months ago from Celine Caro to Jade Monroe." My throat went dry. "Who authorized that?" She pointed to the screen. It was a digital form signed under Jade's name with your mailing address. I didn't say a word, just nodded and walked out into the drizzle. It didn't feel like an accident anymore. Mr. Vexler's office sat on the 3rd floor of an aging brick building near the edge of Old Town Tacoma. No receptionist, just a worn nameplate and a quiet hallway that smelled faintly of tobacco and old paper. He opened the door himself. "Ms. Caro," he said, offering a polite smile. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." His office was modest, not what you'd expect from someone who once managed the legal estate of one of the city's oldest families. But the file already laid out on the table told me enough he was prepared. "I want to be honest," he began. "When your parents brought in the amended trust documents, I was surprised. Your name had been removed from all future disbursements. Everything was reassigned solely to your sister. Everything I asked, even though I already knew the answer." He nodded slowly, "Yes. All assets, real estate retirement funds, and the family holding in Harborview equity." I blinked. "That holding includes the land parcels my grandfather left, correct?" "Yes." "And under the original trust, you were designated as a 50% co-beneficiary." I sat still, feeling the chair stiffen beneath me. "Can I see that original version?" He stood and moved to a small safe behind his desk. With practiced fingers, he unlocked it and pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed with wax. He handed it to me. "This copy was meant for you. Your mother said she'd deliver it." "Of course she did." I broke the seal and unfolded the pages. As my eyes scanned the old document, my breath caught. There it was, my name clearly printed. Not as a footnote, not as an afterthought, but side by side with Jade's equal. And then something else fell out from between the pages. A sticky note scribbled in careful handwriting. "For Celine, retained copy. Don't lose this. Your grandfather was very specific." I swallowed hard. They'd buried it deliberately. Not just this document, but a dozen choices, 100 conversations I was never included in. I thought of the letter I found back in college, the one that ended the most serious relationship I'd ever had. Back then, I believed the man I loved had walked away without a word, just an email. "I'm sorry, this isn't working. Your family's right, we're not a good match." I blamed him, I blamed myself. I never once thought to blame them. Until now, something inside me turned slowly, not with rage, but with clarity. I tucked the trust paper into my bag, thanked Mr. Wexler, and walked out without saying much more. But instead of driving home, I headed straight to the library. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I needed to know how far the erasure went. An hour later, sitting at a public records computer, I opened my old student loan profile. Just curiosity at first. A lingering suspicion I couldn't explain. And there it was, a federal loan opened in my name in 2016 for a program I never enrolled in. Tacoma School of Business Development. I froze. That was the year Jade had moved back home after her second divorce. She was trying to rebuild her life. Mom said it was hard, said we all have to pitch in, but I didn't think it would mean this. The loan was over $32,000, interest had accrued, and the mailing address, our old home, where I hadn't lived in 6 years. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared at the screen, fingers trembling. It wasn't just the estate. They'd stolen my future, too. I broke the seal with a slow, careful rip, like peeling back skin from a wound I hadn't realized was still fresh. The paper inside wasn't long, just 3 pages. But it held more weight than anything my parents had said to me in the last decade. My eyes locked on the first line, and something inside me dropped like a stone. It was legal, a notarized copy of the original trust document dated 14 months ago. Clear as glass. My name listed in black and white as a 50% co-owner of all family real estate and retirement assets. Right there. Not in the footnotes, not in an appendix. Equal. My mother's signature. My father's, and in the margin a neat sticky note in Mr. Wexler's handwriting. "For Celine, copy retained." I sat frozen. Not out of shock, but out of confirmation. This wasn't just a passive exclusion. It was a deliberate rewrite of the truth. 14 months ago. That was before Jade moved back in. Before the sudden family-only dinners. I stopped being told about. Before my birthday passed without a single phone call. Before I began wondering if I was being slowly faded out, or if I'd just never truly been included in the first place. Mr. Wexler stood quietly and placed a glass of water in front of me. "Take it home," he said gently, "and don't rush to respond. Let the truth settle first." I nodded, words caught in my throat. On the drive home, the envelope sat in the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. My fingers twitched on the steering wheel, itching to call someone. But who? Jade. The same woman who forged a mail redirect under my name. Mom! The one who said I was too sensitive to handle property matters. No, I wasn't ready to scream, not yet. At home, I sat on the edge of my couch, the trust still in hand, and did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not loud, not messy. Just that hollow, cold kind of cry, the kind that comes when you realize what happened to you wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. I opened my laptop and began listing numbers. Things I hadn't allowed myself to tally before. The second mortgage after the crash, the new roof, the plumbing leak, the property tax bill they forgot to mention until the lien notice showed up. $78,300. That was the total I had covered quietly across 6 years, because I believed that was what family did. Because my mother called it a favor just until things smooth out. Turns out, in this family, favors don't earn you a seat at the table. They buy someone else's chair. Fan 5. Where my name used to be. Later that afternoon, I drove to my father's mechanic shop. The place hadn't changed in 20 years. Same dented signage, same squeaky doorbell that chirped like a wounded bird. Dad sat behind the counter, flipping through invoices like any other Tuesday. When he looked up, his eyes didn't soften. No warmth, just vague recognition. Didn't expect you, he said flatly. I shrugged, thought I'd say hi. The air smelled like oil, rubber, and memory, the kind that never leaves your skin. My gaze drifted to the back wall, the founder's plaque. 10 years ago, we'd installed it together. I had designed it myself, my name engraved right beside Jade's under our parents. But now, only 3 names remained. Mine was gone. I stepped closer, feigning admiration. Was the plaque updated? He didn't look up. Jade's been helping more lately. She's earned it. I bit down hard on the inside of my cheek. So, erasing someone's name is now how we promote people. He shrugged. You moved out. You've got your own thing now. Write my own thing. Like paying off their mortgage when foreclosure loomed. Like managing cross-state logistics when Dad's health started declining. Like being invisible in the family I used to hold together. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break down. I just turned, walked out. Before I said something I couldn't take back. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table in silence, the kind that buzzed in your ears when the betrayal finally settled. I opened my laptop and logged on to the Pierce County Clerk's portal. I'd never bothered with land records before. But tonight I wanted facts, not feelings. I typed in my parents' address and clicked through the deed history. There it was. 3 months ago, our childhood home white siding, warped front steps, and the magnolia tree we planted for my 10th birthday had been legally transferred to Jade Monroe. No mention of a joint owner, no reference to any trust. Just a clean, quiet transaction. I swallowed, scrolling further. Then came the warehouse, the industrial property my grandfather had acquired in 1978, the one Dad always referred to as our family's backbone, had also been transferred, also to Jade. No public statement, no discussion, no signature from me, even though I'd helped pay for the roof replacement after a hailstorm 3 years ago. So this was why Vexler had reached out. Legally, he had to notify all prior beneficiaries before any changes took place. And the only reason I even found out was because I asked. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd tried to erase me. I closed the laptop and walked out to the porch. Trust paper still in my hand. The edges crumpled where my grip had tightened. The sun was dipping behind the neighbor's chimney, casting gold over the cracked pavement. I sat down by the mailbox and looked at my name again. Celine Marie Caro, co-beneficiary. Clear, formal, valid. I read it like scripture, because in this family only paperwork seemed to matter. My phone buzzed in my lap. Jade. The message was short. Don't make this messy. You were never meant to have it anyway. I didn't react, didn't reply. But the line sat in my chest like smoke. Not because it shocked me, but because it confirmed everything I already knew. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. That night I didn't sleep, I didn't pace either. I just lay in bed with the lamp on, reviewing everything. Trust documents, account records, the student loan in my name, the dead email, thread from someone I used to love. It wasn't one betrayal. It was a system, a quiet design to shrink me. And I'd let them. Until now. Sunday morning arrived wrapped in sunshine that felt too precise, like a scalpel, not warmth. I didn't do my hair, didn't bake, I didn't even bring the deviled eggs. Mom always expected the ones she never thanked me for. Instead, I picked up a store-bought pie and a bottle of cheap red wine from the corner market. No card, no message. Just a placeholder for presents. Their driveway was already full when I pulled up. Pastel cardigans, floral blouses, laughter that floated like perfume, all the markers of polite treachery. I waited until Jade's conversation with a pair of church friends shifted before I walked up. She turned flashbulb smile. "Oh, you made it," she chirped. I handed her the pie. Store was out of your favorite, so I improvised. She took it with polished nails and eyes that swept my plain blouse, like she was scanning for weakness. There was nothing to find. Inside the house, smelled like garlic bread and rose air freshener, familiar but hollow. Mom was in the kitchen assigning tasks to a teenager I didn't recognize. Probably a volunteer. When she saw me, she lit up. "It's so nice to have both my girls here," she beamed, lingering on Jade, especially the one who's been here through thick and thin. I didn't react, not with anger, not even hurt. Just another line added to the case file in my mind. I served myself last barely a portion and started toward the corner armchair I'd always been pushed into. But Jade stopped me with a saccharine smile. "We saved you a seat at the big table today," she said, "just for today." Mom chimed in tone syrupy. "You've always preferred the couch, though." I took the seat, not out of pride, out of strategy. The table buzzed with polite lies, retirement plans, Jade's new foundation choir schedules. Then with a clink of her glass, Jade stood. "I just wanted to thank everyone for supporting my new initiative," she said, glowing. "The Callista Grace Foundation for Women in Recovery." Applause. Camera flashes. My mother dabbing her eyes like it was the royal wedding. "And the startup funds came from the estate?" Jade added sweetly, "My parents believe in what I'm doing, and I'm honored to carry the family legacy forward." I stared at my wine glass. Red droplets clung to the rim like evidence. That money? Part of it was mine. After lunch, my hands moved on autopilot, gathering forks, stacking plates, wiping crumbs from tablecloths, like I had done 100 Sundays before. Familiar, mindless. But when I reached for the last glass, Dad appeared beside me. No eye contact. Just that same stiff tone he always used when avoiding something obvious. "Don't worry about it, Jade's got it now." Not helping, not taking turns. "Got it," like I'd been quietly let go from a job no one told me I had. I nodded slow, "Of course she does." As I turned to leave, Jade leaned in behind me, her breath warm against my ear. "You're lucky I let you come today." That was the moment I needed to breathe. I excused myself and walked to the guest bathroom, the one I painted soft cream 6 years ago. While Mom was recovering from knee surgery, still smelled like lavender and pine sol. I remembered every brushstroke, every time I held this family together with things they would never give me credit for. Inside the bathroom, I stared at the mirror, not at my face, but through it. Images flooded back like silent flashbacks. The time I sold my vintage camera collection to pay for Jade's DUI attorney. The Christmas I skipped Maui because Dad's truck needed tires. The night I drove 2 hours with soup and painkillers when Mom had the flu, only to find out she'd already told the church group Jade brought them. She told everyone the car was from Jade, the money was from Jade, the effort, the care, the legacy, always Jade. I opened the cabinet for a tissue and saw it. A thick envelope wedged between old coupons and expired Tylenol. Cream cardstock, gold trim. An invitation. Founders Dinner honoring Jade Monroe as sole legacy bearer of the Caro family vision. The banquet was scheduled next month, fully funded apparently by what they now referred to as pooled family resources. In other words, my trust, my inheritance, my work. I sat on the toilet lid, rereading the words until they blurred, not from tears, but from something sharper, the realization that they weren't even pretending anymore. They were rewriting history publicly, celebrating the theft while smiling through wine glasses. I flushed the toilet without using it. Washed my hands slowly, smoothed my blouse like armor, then unlocked the door. Jade stood outside giggling with a woman about chicken or beef options for the dinner. I walked past her without flinching. But as I passed, I whispered so quietly she had to pause to catch it. I hope you enjoy your last meal where no one questions your lies. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because the next step wouldn't be emotional. It would be legal. The next morning, I was already awake before the sun rose. No alarm, no breakfast, just coffee and resolve. The kind of focused silence you only get when you've been burned to the bone and decide not to scream, but to write the report. I told my supervisor I needed the day. Family paperwork, I said no one asked questions. Downtown, Tacoma was quiet, the courthouse even quieter. I stood in line at the records window with my tote bag over one shoulder, documents inside zipped and categorized. I filled out the form. My hand didn't shake, but I could feel sweat beneath my collarbone. 10 minutes later, a clerk slid a folder across the counter. Inside were recent deed transfers under the Caro name, including the Cedar Ridge Lake House. Our family's supposed healing place, built by my grandfather, the one place that held all our summers, all our silences, all our hope. This signature. "It's off a," Mr. Ledbetter muttered, tracing his finger along the ink. I nodded, quiet but firm. I think it was forged by my mother. He didn't look shocked. "I've seen this before," he said, voice level. "But what makes this interesting is your father set up a contingency trust in your name 10 years ago." I blinked. "A what?" "A legal trust that activates under 2 conditions. 1, if he's declared mentally incapacitated, and 2, if there's credible evidence of fraud or manipulation involving family assets. This document, if verified as forged, could trigger both." The room went still. I stared at the paperwork, suddenly heavier in my hands. "Would that override the updated will?" I asked. "If the trust is valid, and I believe it is, then yes," he said. "You could regain legal authority over a significant portion of the estate." I nodded, but my body felt foreign. My fingers, my arms, like I was borrowing someone else's calm, someone stronger than me. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer. I simply stood and thanked him, then walked out of the office, the wind slicing across my face like someone waking me from a very long dream. Back home, I didn't waste time. I called a mobile notary and booked a handwriting analyst. I didn't want a courtroom, not yet, but I wanted to be ready if they pushed. I scanned every document into a secured cloud folder, one by one, clean, crisp, labeled. Then I named the drive Caro Archive. Just typing the name made my stomach turn. My name, theirs, now at war. That night, while pouring tea, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, the transcript appeared. "Whatever you're digging into, stop, you're not thinking clearly. You don't want to destroy this family." I hit play. It was my mother's voice, soft, measured. The kind of tone she used when telling me I was overreacting. When she said I'd embarrassed her. When she made it seem like the pain I carried was something I'd imagined. She was right about one thing. I didn't want to destroy the family. I just wanted them to stop destroying me. By Friday afternoon, the report came in. The handwriting analyst didn't use dramatic language, just facts. The signature on the quitclaim deed shows significant deviations and is unlikely to match the verified samples attributed to Ronald C. Caro. It was everything I feared and everything I needed. I saved the PDF to my encrypted folder alongside the original trust, the fake deed, and my student loan file, the one opened under my name to fund Jade's fresh start. Then I renamed the archive Inheritance Integrity. It sounded clinical corporate, maybe because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was organized theft, quiet, calculated, legal until it wasn't. That night I tried to cook dinner, but I left the pan too long on the burner. The smoke alarm screamed while I stood motionless, eyes burning from something that had nothing to do with fire. Saturday passed in a blur. I folded the same load of laundry twice, spent too long in front of the vacuum, watching the same spot disappear over and over like it might give me answers. I wasn't thinking clearly, but my body was preparing. Then Sunday came. A text lit up my screen. "Mom wants brunch. Stone Cafe, neutral ground. We should all just talk. Don't wear drama." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "I'll be there." But I didn't go to make peace. I went to measure the distance between who they thought I was and who I had become. Stone Cafe was the kind of place that looked like forgiveness. Clean lines, glass walls, light jazz on a loop. but I knew better. It was the perfect backdrop for people who wanted to control the narrative. They were already seated when I arrived. Mom wore a coral blazer, lips painted in a color called compassion. Jade stood and kissed the air beside my cheek. "Celine," she said sweetly, "glad you came." I gave a half smile and sat down. The server offered mimosas I declined. Conversation drifted from weather to church to a neighbor's new boat. Jade spoke like a panelist, confident, curated, controlled. She quoted scripture when it suited her, and dropped words like impact and healing. Then Mom leaned forward and placed a hand over mine so light it barely registered. "You'll understand one day," she said gently. "We just didn't want you burdened with all the property stuff. You've always been more sensitive." There it was again. That word, sensitive. Not emotional, not passionate, not perceptive. Just soft as small someone to set aside. I dabbed my lips with a napkin, placed it on the table, and looked her in the eye. "I may be sensitive," I said softly, "but I'm not blind, and I'm not small." Their smiles cracked just slightly. I pulled out a $20 bill and laid it beside my untouched omelet. Jade blinked. "Celine, don't be dramatic." I didn't look at her. "Drama," I said, "requires performance." And I wasn't performing anymore. "I'm just done pretending this isn't real." That's what I said when I stood up from that table at Stone Cafe. The chair didn't scrape the door, didn't slam, just quiet footsteps, deliberate. The kind of exit where silence bruises louder than words ever could. But of course Jade couldn't help herself. "You're overreacting," she called behind me, voice loud enough to draw a few stares. "No one's trying to take anything from you." I paused at the hostess stand and turned just enough for eye contact. "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what the paperwork says." The air outside felt cleaner, sharper, like the first breath after you stop crying. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I walked. Because I wasn't closing a chapter. I was opening a file. On my terms. The glass door to the Pierce County Clerk's office clicked shut behind me, muffling the city's noise. I stood in the hallway for a beat, clutching the manila envelope I hadn't planned to bring, but now realized I had never let go of. Inside it were the questions no one else wanted to answer. The clerk didn't ask for backstory, just my name and the request. "Workstation 3, she said, sliding a plastic visitor badge across the counter. I sat down at the terminal and typed slow at first, then faster, addresses, parcel numbers, ownership histories. There it was, the lake house, transferred from Ronald C. Caro to Jade Monroe 3 months ago. The document was clean, legally speaking. Signed, stamped, sealed. But the date, it didn't make sense. Because I remembered that weekend. Dad was in the ICU recovering from a minor stroke. I had driven him to the hospital myself. Sat beside him through the CT scans, the restless nights, the endless blood work I had brought him. The soft blanket he liked, the one Mom said was too pink for a man. There was no way he signed anything that weekend. Then another detail caught my eye. The e-notary seal at the bottom. Texas Sign Notary, Remote Division. I copied the registry number and searched. The notary was registered under the name Monica Viral. I froze. Monica was Jade's college roommate, the one who once helped Jade fake a doctor's note in sophomore year to skip finals. I remember because I drove them both home after they got caught laughing about it. Back then it was immaturity, now it was fraud. A chill moved through me. Not fear, not anger. Just clarity. I printed everything, the backdated filing, the notary record, the deed. I walked out into the afternoon sun and didn't even feel the light, because something colder was rising in me. This wasn't miscommunication. This was theft. Back home, I walked into my bedroom and unlocked the fireproof box under my bed. Inside was the original trust. The one Dad asked me to hold when I was still naive enough to think trust and blood were the same thing. I opened it. In the event of parental retirement or death, all properties and financial assets are to pass to Celine Marie Caro, sole daughter and legal heir. I blinked. Below the sentence was his signature. Dad's real one. The swooping R, the loop in the C, the crooked B and Caro that always leaned left. He used to say it looked like a 6, like good fortune. This was his hand, not the sanitized forged stroke on the quitclaim deed. This was him. I sat there for a long time, Not out of doubt. Out of grief. Grief for the girl I used to be. The one who thought loyalty would protect her. The one who stayed because she believed family would eventually notice. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new folder. This one I named Active C. Caro. Inside I dropped the original trust, the forged deed, Monica Viral's registry record, screenshots of texts from Jade, screenshots of the bank transfers I made when Mom's roof collapsed, audio clips. I'd quietly recorded my mother saying how Jade sacrificed everything while I sat in the next room with her bills in my lap. Then I added one more file, a draft letter, unsigned, addressed to their estate attorney. Not a lawsuit, not yet, but a statement of facts, a warning shot with teeth. I didn't hit send, not yet, because I wasn't ready to throw a grenade, but I was ready to build the fuse. That night, as I stood by my window with a cup of water and no appetite, my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. My mother's voice syrup thick and slow. Celine, please don't make a big deal out of this. We've all moved on. Just be grateful. Jade's willing to manage things. There it was. The guilt-wrapped demand, the narrative. They weren't trying to erase me. I was just too emotional to understand. But I didn't feel rage anymore. What I felt was something cleaner, like bone after the flesh has burned away. I placed the phone face down and whispered into the quiet, I'm not the one making this a big deal. You already did. You just didn't think I'd notice. Still and solid. No, I whispered, placing the phone screen face down on the table. Not this time. My cursor hovered over the inbox for only a second. Then I typed subject client name Celine M. Caro, breach of trust and property fraud inquiry. To Norelle Nix. I hadn't spoken to Norelle in years. But you don't forget women like her, the kind who doesn't raise her voice but doesn't lose either. She once made a county clerk reissue a deed in 48 hours with one phone call and a faxed footnote. I hit send, and I didn't just prep documents that night. I prepped myself. The black folder on my kitchen table looked like any other organizer, neat, zippered, quiet. But inside it, every betrayal with a timestamp. Every act of erasure indexed like an archive of war. I didn't pace, didn't cry. I reviewed, reread. Then I ironed my blouse sleeves firm collar flat. Because when women like me show up to battles like these, we don't wear armor, we become it. By noon, I pulled into the driveway of the house I used to call home. The magnolia tree still leaned slightly to the left, like even it had learned to bow around them. I noticed the wind chime was different. Gone was the copper bell I'd gifted Mom on her 60th. Replaced by glass rods sterile and modern, echoing the sharpness they preferred now. I didn't honk, I didn't rush, just walk slowly, each heel click deliberate. When I rang the bell, Jade opened it, already smiling like this was her coronation. She wore white, not off-white, white symbolism wrapped in smugness. Glad you could make it, she said sweetly. We're all waiting in the living room. She stepped aside, motioning like a hostess. Like I was late to something she had authored. I didn't speak, I walked in. The living room was staged like a tribunal. Dad in his recliner arms crossed Mom perched like a prayer circle leader, and a folder sat neatly on the coffee table. Not mine, of course. Jade reached for it the moment I sat. This is just a formality. She began final draft of the division agreement, reviewed by a third-party mediator. I raised a hand calm as marble. No need. Unzip my folder, and then, document by document, I laid it out like surgical steel on glass. Original trust. Property transfers, forged signature comparisons, notary registry. Transaction summaries, photos, time-stamped, call logs. Mom inhaled Dad's gaze dropped to the carpet. This is the original trust I said. Tapping the signed and sealed copy, executed 5 years ago, equal parts both parents, no amendments. Silence. This. I slid the forged deed forward, is the notarized quitclaim filed last month. Handwriting analysis confirms the signature doesn't match. I placed the next printout down. The notary on record, Monica Viral, Jade's former roommate, registered as remote service filed while Dad was hospitalized and under medical supervision. Jade's jaw twitched, and this I said, gently, placing the final document is a letter from my attorney confirming these transactions are legally contestable. and that forging documents involving estate assets constitutes civil and criminal fraud. She leaned back. You're bluffing. I didn't blink. Then take me to court. She scoffed, tossed her hair like it could distract anyone from perjury. You're vindictive, Celine. You always have been. No, I said quietly. I've just always been here, cleaning up your mistakes while you handed out stories with bows on them. Mom gasped, hand to her chest not from shock, but from fear. She reached for Dad's hand. He didn't return the gesture. You never said you wanted the estate, she murmured. We just thought Jade could manage it. You were always so sensitive. There it was again. I tilted my head, more sensitive or more inconvenient. No one answered. Then my phone buzzed. I clicked speaker. Norel's voice, crisp and controlled, filled the silence. This is attorney Norel Nix. If we don't have confirmation of mutual resolution by Monday 9 a.m., we'll proceed with a formal petition for injunction and full asset review under State Statute 416B. I trust that's clear. She hung up. I stood. No one moved. My palms didn't sweat. My knees didn't shake. Every beat of this moment had been practiced in my mind for weeks, but now I didn't need to perform it. I was simply being... Then I saw it. On the shelf behind Jade, a photo frame. Family trip to San Antonio, supposedly from the golden years. In the frame, Mom, Dad, Jade. But I remembered that day I took that picture. I had set the timer, propped the camera on the cooler, and run into place. I walked over, opened the frame. Behind the edited image folded in half was the real photo. There I was, standing between them. They hadn't erased me completely. They'd just tried. I tucked the photo into my folder, turned, and walked out. Not a word, not a farewell. Just the sound of paper truth and history leaving the room together. Grinning arm wrapped around Dad's shoulder, sun in my eyes. They hadn't erased me completely, just tried. I folded the original photo, the one they'd hidden behind the edited frame, and tucked it gently into my bag. What they tried to bury the truth had quietly protected. And as I walked out of that room, the only sound behind me was the tap of my heels across their hardwood floor. No one called my name. No one followed. Because this wasn't a family anymore. Just people I used to belong to. Outside the courthouse, the morning air felt oddly still, like the sky itself knew what was about to happen. I stood there on the courthouse steps, folder under my arm, spine straight. In the reflection of the glass doors, I didn't see the daughter they used to dismiss. I saw a woman who had nothing left to prove, only the record to correct. And I walked in. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No oak benches or soaring ceilings. Just beige walls and a gray floor that scuffed beneath careful shoes. But to me, it may as well have been the final battleground. My parents sat side by side in the front row, faded in more ways than one. Dad stared straight ahead. Arms crossed like this was a traffic hearing. Mom clutched a silk handkerchief like it might rewrite history. Jade, poised in a fitted gray blazer, looked like she was hosting a press conference. But her smirk didn't land today. Not after the living room, not after the folder. I took my place beside Norel. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Her confidence was carved in stone. The bailiff called the room to order, and when the judge entered, even Jade's posture stiffened. She wasn't running the show anymore. And then it began. Your Honor, Norelli said, voice calm with permission. We'd like to begin with an audio submission. The judge nodded. She pressed play. It was tinny through the courtroom speaker, but unmistakable. Jade's voice laughing. My mother, she won't check. She never does. Dad, quieter, muttering, she just wants to be loved. The kind of silence that followed wraps around your throat. You could almost hear people blinking. The judge leaned forward. Has this recording been verified? Yes, Your Honor. Time-stamped, authenticated, and obtained legally by a third party present in the household at the time. Jade shot up. That's taken out of context. Sit down, Miss Caro, the judge said, sharp and low. This court does not tolerate grandstanding. She sank back down, her face pale beneath powder. But I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. Because that recording wasn't just evidence. It was a mirror. Every suspicion, every ache I'd swallowed for years laid bare. My parents didn't look at me, didn't flinch. That somehow hurt most. But I wasn't finished. I stood folder in hand. This, I said, placing the final document before the clerk, is the part they forgot. Norel passed it to the judge. It's a clause, I said, written into the original family trust. signed by my grandfather before he passed. The judge scanned it. It grants me full veto power over any transfer of family assets prior to my 35th birthday. When is your 35th birthday, Ms. Caro? The judge asked. 2 days from now. He looked up, eyes calm. Then, as of 2 days from now, no transfer may proceed without your express consent. I heard it. The breath Jade tried to hold back, the sound of control slipping through her teeth. She turned to our parents, whispering urgently, "You knew about this. Did you even read it?" Mom stared at the table. Dad rubbed his forehead like it might erase what was written in black ink. I wasn't done. From my coat pocket, I pulled a tiny faded origami crane, its wings crumpled edges soft. My grandfather had folded it with me one Sunday in his garage. "You're the one with wings, Celine," he'd said. "You'll need them more than you know." That little bird had sat inside the claws envelope for over a decade. It had survived the fire of silence, and now it landed right where it was meant to, on the courtroom table beside Truth and Consequence. The judge's ruling came steady and clear. Effective immediately, all estate assets in question are frozen. Probate records will be reopened. A formal investigation into misuse of family funds is authorized. Jade slumped. Mom tried to speak, maybe to spin, maybe to beg, but the judge raised his hand. "You've had your say." I turned to leave. As I passed them, Dad looked away. Mom whispered, "Celine, please." I paused, only for a breath. "This isn't revenge," I said, without turning around. "This is restoration." And I walked out, not storming, not breaking, just steady steps toward a life built on my own name. The gravel crackled beneath my tires as I pulled into the driveway of the cedar-shingled house in Lake Bay. The deed now bore my name. No fanfare, no champagne, no closure note. Just stillness. I stepped inside. It smelled like pine and peace, like soil that remembers where roots come from. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And for once, I didn't need them to see me. I just needed to know. They couldn't erase me, because I had never been the problem. I had been the proof. The house looked almost untouched from the outside, fresh paint, tidy hedges, the kind of perfection that made it easy to pretend nothing had happened. But inside, it held a different kind of memory. Not loud, not heavy, just there quietly wrapping itself around me like a song I'd once loved but hadn't heard in years. I shut the door behind me gently, no slams, no dramatics. The creak of the wooden floorboards welcomed me back like an old friend. The scent of cedar still clung to the walls. Warm, earthy, like the kind of hug that never asked for anything in return. I set my keys on the entry table and ran my hand along the bookshelf my grandfather built with his own hands. His black-bound ledgers still sat in a neat line beside faded gardening books and a brass compass he never used but always kept. Each room still carried him, not just in objects, but in presence. He never needed to raise his voice. He never had to claim authority. His strength came from stillness. And now maybe so did mine. I walked into the kitchen. New marble countertops, updated cabinetry, but the same old window above the sink, the one he used to hum in front of while washing garden tomatoes. I stood there bathed in morning light and felt something shift. It wasn't closure. It was permission to be still and finally to feel peace. The knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, Mrs. Alden stood there, scarf wrapped around her neck like always holding a weathered envelope. "Found this in the church's old mail slot," she said. "Has your name on it?" The handwriting on the envelope stopped me. I didn't need to open it to know it was his. Inside, I sat in the creaky armchair that still tilted slightly left and opened the letter. The ink had faded just a little, but his words landed like fresh truth. "Celine, if you're reading this, then the winds have shifted. I feared they might. People forget what's fair when fear gets involved. But I've always known your heart. That's why I chose you, not because you'd hold power, but because you'd protect what mattered. Speak softly, but stand when it matters. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always knows where to land. Love always, Papa." I folded the letter slowly, held it to my chest, and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It wasn't relief. It was release. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a voicemail. My mother. I stared at it for a long moment before pressing play. Her voice was thin, careful. "Celine, we didn't realize what we were doing until it was already too late. Maybe we didn't want to." I don't expect you to forgive us, but I hope you're okay." There were no tears, not anymore. Just a long, hollow breath. Some things don't need slamming to be closed. Some doors just stay shut. I walked upstairs to what used to be Papa's study. Now it was my reading room. White curtains, shelves filled with stories he would have loved, on the mantel. I placed something small, a folded origami crane. Not just paper. A memory, a symbol, a version of me they had tried to erase, the girl who once stayed silent because she thought love was something you had to earn. She lived here now. Proud, whole. I didn't need to burn bridges. But I wasn't rebuilding them either. Down the street, I heard children laughing. One girl, maybe 10, chased a paper bird caught in the wind. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled because I wasn't chasing approval anymore. Not from people who had looked straight through me for years. They gave away the estate thinking I was disposable. But I had always been the foundation, the quiet one, the steady one, the one who remembered what was worth keeping and what needed to be let go. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and paused. No grand exit, no applause. Just the sun on my face and a life I didn't have to ask permission to begin. Sometimes you don't need to slam the door. Sometimes not returning is loud enough. Because standing up for yourself isn't always about shouting. Sometimes it's just finally walking away with your dignity intact. In the end, Celine didn't raise her voice. She raised the truth. She didn't walk away to punish them. She walked away to protect what was left of herself. Not everyone who shares your blood will honor your name, and sometimes the loudest kind of healing is quiet. If you've ever been erased, overlooked, or made to feel small in the very place you were meant to feel safe, I hope Celine's story reminded you. You don't have to stay where you're only seen when you're silent. Share your story in the comments I read, everyone. Comment 8 if you've ever had to rebuild yourself in silence. And if this story resonated with you, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more stories of quiet strength and hard-earned freedom.